the main reason I like American Pie, The Wedding, and the reason I find that it's better than the second film, but still not as good as the first film, is that it manages to retain the style of comedy and the characteristics of the characters in this, but it brings them up to a much more, I guess, adult setting, because there is a wedding here, and Jim and, I should point out there will be spoilers here if you haven't seen the other ones, but Jim and Michelle are getting married. And obviously that's a very grown-up thing to do, bearing in mind in the first film they were still at high school getting ready for their prom. They were at college in the second film. Now they're doing an exceptionally grown-up thing, and they're at a wedding, and obviously there are a lot of other grown-ups around them, and they have to be sensible and mature. But they still are quite juvenile with their sense of humour and their personalities and how they like to, I guess, behave. But a lot of them have grown up a lot. But there are one or two characters who perhaps haven't quite managed to reach that level of maturity yet. And they're still quite juvenile, and that causes potential problems at the wedding. And as you can expect, some pretty sticky situations follow, and they get themselves into some unusual scenarios. Stifler is definitely a driving force behind a lot of what happens here. Seann William Scott, I think he's brilliant at this character, and I can't really see anybody else playing him. Obviously with Jim and Michelle, Jason Biggs and Alyson Hannigan being the centre of the show, that's brilliant, because they're actually my two favourite characters, especially Jim and Jason Biggs. So that made me very happy. I think we've got some really nice character development in this. As I said, it does feel like a step up from the second film, because I just find that it's more of a character development than it was between the first two. And I think it's nice to look at how they've grown and where they are in life. Certainly when you've seen the first film, and you can look back at where they were, and the setting, making it at a wedding, quite a formal occasion. It's not really the kind of situation where we'd find these characters in the previous films. And I think that just works really well on several levels. The style of comedy is more to my liking than it is in the second film. I do think it's still very clever and very creative. It was released in 2003, directed by Jesse Dillon and written by Herz. And it's got 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which I think is a pretty respectable rating, especially for this kind of film where it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not usually my style of humour. I don't like this kind of juvenile comedy ordinarily, but it works because the American Pie films, or some of the American Pie films, are very well crafted. They're well directed. The scripts are very clever. They're not, even though the style of comedy on screen is quite immature comedy, a lot of gags and sexual innuendos and things, the way it's put together is very clever and very detailed, and not just, it's more sophisticated than it seems. And that's something that I really appreciate, and I'm really pleased to see it unfolding. It's definitely worth watching. If you liked the first film, but you didn't like the second film, I'd say still go ahead with it. And it's definitely worth watching, even if you didn't like the second film. If you did like the second film, then I'm fairly confident that you will also like this one. Personally, really, really enjoyed it. I think, well, I don't know. Do I feel like this? I'm not sure. We have American Pie, The Reunion, which was 9 years after this one. I'm trying to think whether or not I feel like The Wedding should have been the last one with this group of characters, or if I'm actually quite happy that they carried it on. I'm not sure. I actually haven't made up my mind. If you do have an opinion either way, let me know. But personally, I do think American Pie, The Wedding is much better than I expected.